Of the Premier League teams linked, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal are the most active on the player side.
We're shopping at a level now where we know the names intimately. Rodrygo is number one, but after that, I'd say Anthony Gordon's my number two.
I just think that's a massive, massive level raiser.
Berta's new. He's had to assess the plan from Edu and Jason Atu, and now he's starting to move in the market, and that's why I think that Arsenal will really get going in the early part of July. If they agree a fee for Šeško, I think that one could actually be done when the window opens on the 16th.
I do have a preference for Šeško.
He has naturally the running numbers.
Does he score enough goals, though?
Mate, come on.
Yeah.
You need to come in here and rip that shirt off his back.
Yes.
And that's the mentality
Absolutely
we want to have.
Yeah. A proper striker means a goal scorer.
He comes in, he scores a huge amount of goals.
I can see a scenario where both Arsenal and Chelsea have another transfer head-to-head.
Zubimendi, done?
Keep calm, Arsenal fans. Arsenal consider that agreed in principle, a done deal.
Hello and welcome to Inside Gooners, talkSPORT's dedicated show about all things Arsenal. It may be the end of the season, but there's still so much to discuss in the world of the Gunners. So today, we'll be bringing you a transfer special. I'm Adrian Clarke, and I'm delighted to say that joining me in the studio today are Clive Palmer and Rory Talks Football. Guys, how we doing?
Not bad.
Yeah, you enjoying the summer?
This is the real season, Adrian, isn't it? The transfer season. the football's gone and we can enjoy ourselves.
But you love the football, Clive.
I do love the football.
So, do you love the transfer silly season just as much?
I like to totally stress myself out on every single rumour that's out there. And that takes me through the summer and keeps my levels high. And then when the football starts, I'm already robust.
Yeah. Does it get the juices flowing for you, Rory?
Yeah, it does. You know, now my emotions are dictated by Fabrizio Romano and people like that rather than PJ Moel and people like that. So I prefer it. Sun's out, I can enjoy life.
I'm an Orny guy myself. You know, when Orny speaks, everybody listens, don't they? Right. First up, let's look at what has happened since the final day of the Premier League. A few departures, guys. We've Kieran Tierney has gone to Celtic on a free. Jorginho has gone to Flamengo, of course. We've seen the two loanees depart. Any surprises for you, Clive?
Not yet.
No.
We all sort of knew this was coming. I think, with particularly Tierney and Jorginho, they're sort of good characters, aren't they? That's the impression that you get from seeing them around the club. Sometimes they've not had good playing time, so you can sort of see that they've reacted really well, even when they're not playing. And so I think those characters may be missed. It'd be interesting to see how we refill those gaps, or maybe we already have with people like Marino, who's also a very good sort of character. So I think their experience will be missed. And now Kieran Tierney's gone off to Scotland. I think they're going to use him in that way. Use his character to great example for the younger players up there. So fair play to him.
Yeah, look, there's a part of me, Rory, that thinks I wouldn't have minded Kieran Tierney sticking around because we lack that full-back flying around on the outside. And I always think tactically, it kind of just is another strand, isn't it, to the way that you play the game. But there really probably wasn't any justification in giving him a new deal, given the injury issues that he's had, right?
Yeah, 100%. I did enjoy some of his cameo appearances this season, you know, and there was definitely still a player there. And it's a shame the way his career panned out at Arsenal. But like you said, I think for him as well, moving back up to Scotland, you know, he will play a lot more. And the way that it ended, at least, you know, I actually enjoyed the fact that he did get to make those cameos towards the end of the season. We got to say a proper goodbye. And it is a good character that we've lost.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Jorginho then, chaps? Because, I mean, it felt a natural conclusion, didn't it? He has to go down as a really good signing, though, right? I mean, he was pretty cheap and he added good value to the squad.
I think that window with Jorginho, Kiwior and Trossard was an underrated window.
Yeah,
you know, if you think about their value over the last couple of years, it's been really huge.
Yeah.
You know, Jorginho also came in. What I liked about him was I felt we all know he's a great coach from the substitutes bench.
Yeah, he loves it, doesn't he?
He's also a great coach on the pitch.
Yeah.
And you can see that when Odegaard was out, he has almost been the tactical leader on the pitch. And I think Declan needed that in his first season to settle him down.
Yeah.
I think Havertz needed him to get him going when Havertz arrived. And that sort of value to bring those 2 expensive signings in to help them settle down was really, really good.
Yeah.
Adrian, you know as well as I do, I think physically he dropped away a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, and those gaps started to appear. And when you don't play, the physical gap grows.
Yes.
And so it was time. It was time.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I think as well, Rory, that in Rice, in Marino and in Ødegaard, we've got more than our fair share of leadership qualities in that part of the pitch. So maybe his influence was not quite as much.
Yeah, we do have a lot of leaders. I think the experience that he had was definitely useful. I think it was the PSG away game where he definitely wasn't fit to play but was on the bench just so that he could coach from the sideline. I think that kind of sums up the role that he probably played this season. And I wish in a way that we'd had him in more of his prime years.
Yeah.
Because the relationship and the partnership he had with Rice on the pitch, actually, I think was a really underrated partnership through some of last season. So, no, I wish him all the best.
What happens with Thomas Partey now then, Rory? Because obviously we're hearing talk that talks are ongoing, that Arsenal actually want him to stay. Because I think there was an assumption among some people that maybe he would move on this summer, but that doesn't seem to be the case. As an Arsenal supporter, do you want him to stay?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think money is going to be one issue. I think he spoke recently about the fact that it's probably his last sort of big deal, and that money is obviously a deciding factor. And for us, I mean, if you lose Jorginho and Partey in the same window, that is a lot of experience to lose from the midfield at one go. I also still think Arteta probably sees him as a third choice right back when we need him. So do you bring in a younger replacement? You know, that's another signing. I think if you do lose him, you do need to bring another body in. Yeah. And that's more work to do when there are other priorities.
Rory makes a good point about the money, because he's a big earner. We know that. Is he worth the money at the age that he is? We know he's the wrong side of 30 now. I thought he had a pretty good season. I've got to say, I thought actually in the main, he was still very much worth his place in Arsenal's strongest starting 11. There were ups and downs. I think with Thomas Partey, you know within the first 5 or 10 minutes whether he's going to have a good game or not, don't you? Because there's a sharpness element. And when he's on it, there's not many people better, Clive. But if he's not on it, then really he's not justifying the wages that we're paying.
Yeah, you watch him, you can see by how he moves straight away, how he receives the first pass.
Yeah.
If it's smooth, don't worry about him. I think it's going to be interesting because obviously he's on a good wage right now. Yeah. He's had 5 years at the club. His role within the squad is going to be different. So it's not just about accepting maybe less money over a 2-year period. It's about lesser role. Is he prepared for that, given who's coming in? And I think that's what he has to be talking about with his agent right now, and he's trying to get his best deal. If I'm him, I would probably look to go away and play somewhere else. Yeah. And for Arsenal, tactically, I think we've become, not say easy to read, but we all know our pattern. And he's part of that. We all know the Saliba to Partey to Ødegaard to Saka. That we can close our eyes and see that happening. Maybe it's time for something else. Yeah. And we shouldn't be afraid of that change. You know, even though he's had probably his best season since he's been here.
If Partey does go, who have you got your eye on? Is there anyone out there that you think... Because he would need replacing. You can't lose Jorginho and Partey and just bring in a Zubimendi, right?
You can't really, unless you were to buy another left-footed defender and say to Miles, you know what, mate, we're going to redefine you as a midfielder, which could happen. Yeah. Personally, I like Miles where he is. He's basically playing in midfield anyway, you know, so I like the role he has. And I think obviously he's playing for England in that role, and that could cause issues in the World Cup year. So you could go that way. Or for me, I would go for a younger centre midfielder, really. There's a couple out of France that are being mentioned, and I would look towards that. From a club perspective, they probably want to keep Partey because they don't want to outlay a transfer fee. Yes. But personally, I think it may be time to renew, and we should be looking to go a little bit younger in that area. Yeah. And I'm okay with it, right? Yeah,
well, Sambi Lokonga didn't work, did it really? He's probably one that's going to be on his way. What are these names? Who are these young names that have been?
There's a guy called Lucien Agame. I don't know why you got me speaking these names, Adrian. So I'm now going to look at the comments afterwards. Clive, you butchered that.
Where do you stand with Zinchenko, Rory? Because I kind of assumed he was leaving, but he's got another year, so you know he could in theory absolutely stay and be a valuable player for us as that cover at left back, and maybe that cover in central midfield, not a replacement for Thomas Partey, of course, but someone who could just come on and help us in that department.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one with Zinchenko. I think, obviously, we know he can play in midfield because he's done it for Ukraine for so long, and I don't know, Arteta never really opted to do it, even when he had the opportunity to, until he was kind of really forced to at points this year. And when he did, I thought Zinchenko looked good. So I do think it's an option. I think if we lose Partey, I mean, I've thought for a while that alongside Declan Rice, we need someone else that's got legs in midfield, someone that can really eat up ground, because Rice has to do a lot of that work. So again, I don't know who's out there that could possibly do that.
If we got a good offer for Alexander Zinchenko, would you take it though? Yeah,
I think because of the minimal role that he's playing, he's on decent wages. If you can get the wages off and a decent fee, maybe allows you to go and get Jorel Hato, for example, who we've been to. So.
Yeah, no, that is a player that I like the look of. Someone that can sort of play in a couple of positions as well. Talk to me about him, Clive.
Yeah, as soon as you watch the clips of him, I just see miles there.
Yeah.
Maybe a touch more height and speed.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, so although I like it, I'm also loath to sort of place a player on top of an academy player that's got a lot of the same attributes. So I almost don't want to do it, but it doesn't make sense. I actually think defensively we need a right-footed defender.
Yes.
I think that's where the gap is. You know, we have left-footed players that can cover that side. A right-footed defender that can play both sides at centre back. Looking at someone like Mark Gay, someone like that, who's the last year of his contract, that's a really smart player to go for, who can obviously play on the ball, pass out, and be part of our build-up play. So
yeah, but that's a lot of money, isn't it, to pay for someone who wouldn't be your first choice?
He wouldn't be the first choice, but it's interesting that we went very hard for Dean Huijsen with the same type of discussion. And again, right-footed defender, can play both sides, can carry the ball out. Excuse me. And so I do think after thinking about this...
What about Kivior? He's not a Gabriel. I don't think he's ever going to quite be at that level, but he showed his worth, didn't he? I mean, does he want to stay and be that understudy, I wonder? So could there be a move in the offing for him? Or if you're Arteta or Andrea Berta, are you thinking, no chance of my selling Kivior this summer?
I mean, sometimes you've got to sell when the stock is high.
Okay.
And his stock is high. Napoli have had a little look at him, and AC Milan have looked at him and Zinchenko. So I think that would be interesting, but also they've got to bring the money, right? It's not a charity.
That's the thing for Kivior. It's at this point, do you pick game time or do you pick, possibly winning the biggest trophies?
Right, now the most exciting part of the off-season for fans, or a lot of fans anyway, is of course the potential new signings. Later on we're going to be joined by the man in the know, Ben Jacobs. But for now, let's look at how we think the Gunners need to strengthen over the next few months. It's always fun, isn't it, to have a little play around with fantasy starting 11s. I mean, are we all locked in on Zubimendi first and foremost? Is there no real need to talk about that?
Locked in.
Locked in. Are we locking in?
Locked in.
Locked in, right. OK, Zubimendi. Did we see him at the Nations League? I did, and I thought, yeah, I like what I said. I mean, we've seen a lot of him in the past, of course we have, but what I really enjoyed was his intelligence, like seeing the spaces and surging into it, either with the ball or without the ball. I mean, that role he had in one of the goals was absolutely tremendous, wasn't it? He
sees opportunity, right? And he has the technical and mobility to take the opportunity. Yeah. So he plays at a rhythm which you think, he's slow, so it suddenly accelerate.
Yeah.
And he's just gone past you. And then when he drops away from you into the back two, and drops in there, sometimes at a left back position like Granit Xhaka used to do, and builds from there. And he drops between. He's just very intelligent in that first phase of build up. Yeah. And I think it's nice to sort of open the pitch up in a different way. I think Partey very much, his hips almost glued to the right. You can't twist them to the left. Yeah. And I think it'd be good to get both sides, going.
Age catches up with all this.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But you're right. And on that point, Rory, I mean, you wouldn't know about getting old. But with Rice and Partey, actually, neither I would describe as sharp midfielders. In the mould maybe of a Mikel Arteta back in the day or someone like that, where where they can just, I don't know, they're sharp with their movements. They can play those balls, little one-touch around the corner, and then move and come for the one-touch. That's not really Rice, and it's not really Partey does it, but he does it in a slower manner, doesn't he? He's going to surely help Ødegaard and Saka and whoever's on the left wing, but get better service, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think he's not the fastest player, but his speed of mind is some of the fastest I've seen, and it's the ability to receive the ball on either foot, go either way, and you're on the move, and he can massively accelerate those transitions. I think in the build-up to Marino's goal for Spain, he dropped in between the two centre-backs and fired a ball into Marino's feet, broke. Can't remember who they're playing. Germany, was it? The lines. And that is something where I could see Ødegaard massively benefiting from not himself having to get involved in that build-up and actually being able to get himself into those more attacking positions. And it should speed us up.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see how we play with him in the team. I'm also excited for a new striker, aren't we all? But who's it going to be? Who's it going to be, Clive? Come on, tell me.
Well, my phone told me this morning it was going to be... No, we know the names, right? So we're shopping at a level now where we know the names intimately, and it just depends which direction we go. Centre forwards, there are 3 out there that we're really focused on, and I'm not too worried about which one we go for.
Okay.
But I think we're going to add. I say that, but I do have a preference for Sesko, if I'm honest with you.
Okay, explain why.
I just feel that he has more of a rounded game.
Yeah.
So he spent a lot of last season playing in the front two, so the combination side of his game has improved. It's obvious that he runs like the wind and he can shoot with both feet, so that's hard to miss. He's good in the air.
The show reel is decent.
It's hard to miss, right? It's hard. So those sort of things are quite obvious. But I do think we are more comfortable with a taller centre forward. Yeah. The best period of Mikel Arteta's Arsenal was when we got Havertz centre forward, January 2024, and it all happened from there on in. And you could say it took too long to find out and discover. You know, so I have that bias based on seeing that, and I felt he should have come last summer and spent even though he would have been raw, even more raw than he is today. But with Havertz there, he would have integrated, and Havertz is still there, so there's no rush with him.
Yeah, there is talk that there's a hesitation on his part because he doesn't want to compete for his place, maybe with Kai Havertz. If he comes, who starts first match of the season for you?
Well, I think Havertz does.
Do you?
I do, because there are 125 games in the season.
Well, we hope there are.
Well, we're looking at a 59, 60 game season this year, and in World Cup year, these players are going to be really going away for international breaks and trying very, very hard.
That's true.
You know, so we have to recognise this is a position to share. And the only reason why we fell away this year, we didn't have enough people to share that position with, right? Yeah. So I'm comfortable that the first 11 presents itself to you in the winning time months. Yeah. And we'll all know who to pick. You know, and that's what they're working towards. Okay. So I'm comfortable.
Yeah. Where do you stand on Seško, Gyökeres?
Yeah, I think I'm Sesko just about similar to Clive. Actually, I really would not be unhappy with either option. No, but for me, Sesko is the one for the future. I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in we have to win next season, but there is, Arsenal Football Club will exist after next season, and we do have to look to that. Yeah. I think his athleticism, many elements of that are things you can't teach into a player, and he has naturally the running numbers. I think he offers a lot of what Kai Havertz offers. I think that was something that massively dropped off towards the end of the season. Marino did a great job, but some of those running numbers, Sesko hits them.
Does he score enough goals though? Because the goal munching aspect is what we need. We need that predator guy. Is he that?
I think he is. If you look at the number of goals he scores from the opportunities he gets, it's decent. Okay. I saw Leipzig actually last season were bottom of the Bundesliga for accurate crosses. Okay. You bring him to Arsenal, where you've got Saka whipping them in from one side, and he's 6'5" with an unbelievable jump on him. I think we could see, huge numbers for him. Yeah, so, and then back
looking at Clive's face there.
Yeah. Well, your point about the mentality thing is an interesting one because it's not just about playing for Arsenal; it's about having the mentality to succeed for Arsenal. Yeah. And if he's worried about competition, I say to myself, oh, mate, come on.
Yeah.
You need to come in here and rip that shirt off his back.
Yes.
And that's the mentality we want to have.
Yeah.
You know what dressing room was like.
That's a red flag for me. If a player is uncertain because, I don't know if I'm going to be first choice, make sure you're first choice.
Sure, exactly. Have the ump when you score a goal, have the ump when you're not picked. That's what it's about. That's going to drive our standards up.
Yeah.
And that will help Havertz, it'll help the wide players. So I hope he's got a mentality to not just wear the shirt but succeed in the shirt.
Yeah, and on Gyökeres, because we don't want to completely ignore him, I really like his explosiveness. He is that 6-yard box menace, isn't he? You know, you whip the ball across the face of goal. I'll be honest, I know that it's the Championship, I know that it's the Portuguese League, but I just think with the right service, he scores those goals in the Premier League. I'm not worried about that, but he's a little bit older and maybe doesn't have quite the, as you described, Clive, the rounded skill set of a Šeško.
Yeah, I mean, he comes in, he scores a huge amount of goals. There's no doubt. I think that kind of animal instinct to just score, you know, the amount of times the ball drops in the box for us these days.
Isn't that what we want?
You just want someone that's going to put his foot through it, and if he has to go through someone else to do that, he'll do it. You know, it's that's what he is. He is a raw goal scorer, and so, like I said, I would be more than happy to see him.
But the whole thing about Arsenal in recent years and PSG in the semi-final and the year before in Bayern Munich, it's like Arsenal, if they'd had a proper striker, would have put up a much better fight. A proper striker means a goal scorer. So isn't Gyökeres that guy? Like.
Well, I have less questions about his mentality than I do Šeško's.
Okay.
Because his mentality is, I'm gonna kill someone to score. And so you can see it on him, can't you? The desire to score is significant. I've also got this worry, because we haven't had this type of player for a long time, that when we have a striker that's obsessed by scoring, we end up playing to that player a lot. You know, and if it doesn't work, then other people maybe don't take responsibility on. We need a collective responsibility about scoring more goals and not just playing good football and playing to our principles. There's got to be more desire to hit the box. You said earlier about Odegaard coming deep, etc. Mate, stop coming deep.
Yes.
Stop coming deep. I would fine him if he dropped deep too much.
I like that. Yeah.
Stay high and be where you could get a kick, but we see the ball in high areas.
If you're playing a number 10 for Arsenal, you've got to be getting in the box. Yeah. And Rice is doing it from a sort of slightly deeper role, isn't he? He's playing his part. I think he will do it even more, hopefully, moving forwards. You're right. And I mean, that brings us on to the left wing debate, because I think Arsenal need a left winger that scores more goals, that makes more goals. But very quickly, before we get to that, there is a third name on the list, and it's probably one that isn't exciting the fans quite as much, and that's Ollie Watkins. Is there a belief for you, Rory, that he's still a possibility? And would he come and fight for his place? Because we saw what happened at Villa. He had the right hump when he lost his spot, didn't he? And he didn't like that at all. And I do think that there's a damaged relationship between himself and Emery there. The trust has gone a little bit, I think, for Ollie Watkins. There's no doubt about that. So if we want an opportunist signing, Ollie would be a decent one.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't be a bad signing by any stretch. Just a Premier League proven goal scorer. Like I said, I do think the relationship at Villa, I think the fact that they offered him to Arsenal in January put his nose out of joint a little bit, understandably. But I do think it would represent a bit of a failing in the window if we only ended up with him as the striker, because the immediate questions would be, well, why didn't we bring him in January? And who knows what could have happened to last season if we'd done it. Obviously, the money, and he'll be a bit cheaper now. But it would be the more underwhelming of the three.
Is there a world where Arsenal bring in two?
Maybe if Watkins' price is cheap, but we watched Watkins this year against Saliba. I watched him. Adrian.
They didn't like marking him.
His move, I couldn't find him. he was hard to find, wasn't he?
Well, it was a really interesting position. He was kind of goal hanging, wasn't he? Yeah. He was just ready to spring.
He hangs on the back of the shoulders of the defender, and you watch him, you're thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to go soon, and he goes in behind consistently. And defenders hate that. Yeah. They want to feel the player, want to see him, and he's so cute. And so he impressed me. Obviously, Isak impressed us when he came. But he impressed me a lot, and I thought I could see that happening. But we're underwhelmed with Premier League players, aren't we? We want the YouTube stars to come in. We want those players who we haven't seen more than 1 or 2 games. But I'm sure he would do fine, but it's all about the money, right? And the numbers Villa would want, maybe too high. But Arsenal could steal him from Villa. given their PSR issues. That'd be great.
That would be great. We're not going to steal a Rodrygo or a Nico Williams, are we? We're going to have to pay through the nose for either of those guys. As before, you're Andrea Berta. You know, which one are you going for?
Rodrygo, 100%.
Okay, yeah.
I think that opportunity is the sort of opportunity that doesn't come up that often. A 24-year-old that's got over 260 appearances for Real Madrid has won it all, but I still think has hunger in him to prove himself off the left-hand side, because that's the opportunity he's not been given either for club nor country. A goal scorer, consistently 20 to 30 goal contributions a season. Yeah, I just think that's a massive, massive level raiser.
Yeah, I'm super excited if that happens. But he plays for Real Madrid. Does he really want to leave Real Madrid? Like, I know he wants them to show him a bit of love, and if they do that, he stays, doesn't he?
I think if we get him, he could be broken-hearted for 6 months. I think he really wants to stay there.
Yeah.
But you can see that Xabi Alonso is looking maybe at a left footer on that side, on the right-hand side of the pitch, and he's sort of, he could be the odd man out, and he wants to be on the left. But they've got some good players on the left-hand side that really go that side. So tactically, he's sort of not fitting at the moment. But if Madrid take him to the World Club Cup and they run him out there and then say, there you go, you can have him. I'm not sure about that neither, you know. So I know we put a lot of emphasis on our wide players. Everything we do goes wide, and we ask them to do a lot defensively and attacking wise. Rodrygo is used to that, and I think he's quite creative, and we need that. But I also like Nico Williams as well. And so I am not so clear as I am on the centre forward as the left side. I have.
You'd be equally happy with Nico, yeah. What is it about Nico Williams that you really like?
I like the fact he gets to the second 6-yard box and he can score.
Yeah.
He doesn't hang out there watching the play, you know, and he goes into the penalty spot and he wants to score. He's quick, direct, and his game is easy to see. He's got real clarity about it. I like that. Just very simplistic. I'm going to get it and I'm going early. When you go quickly, defenders back away straight away. So now he's in charge of the duel. I love that about him. I also, he plays much like Zubimendi. For Spain, I see all of those things.
Yeah.
When you watch him for his club side, it's not so consistent, that play. So so maybe I'll see the best when I watch him internationally, but I like him too. But both deals look complex and expensive. You know, so.
Yeah, and that worries us, doesn't it, as Arsenal fans? Because we've had enough complex deals that have sort of not come off for us in the past. I mean, is there anyone else, like, on the radar? Like, or is it either of those two, or we just go elsewhere, you know, look at strengthening in a different position?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do need someone in that position. I think we've seen, you know, the maximum we're going to get out of Trossard and Martinelli, I think, and it is an area we can improve. But the market itself, Leao, you hear a lot. I think there are concerns there. Lookman's a player I'd be interested in, slightly cheaper perhaps, consistent output when it comes to goal scoring. But yeah, for me it would be, you know, if we're serious, it would be Nico Williams or Rodrygo.
Yeah.
What do you think of Anthony Gordon, Adrian? Do you like him?
I'm a fan of Anthony Gordon. I'll tell you the reason I like Anthony Gordon is he's quick, which is really important. And I think the Arsenal team lacks a bit of explosive pace. I know that Martinelli brings it, but he doesn't bring it in the central areas enough for me.
Yeah.
He uses it by the touchline, which is great, but I want to see players drive into those gaps between fullbacks and centre halves. And I think I've seen Gordon do that a little bit at Newcastle. I think he would do it more for us. And he's also very hardworking. Like, he's a team player. Arteta would love him. Yeah. The question mark is, would he score maybe enough goals? I don't know. But then you could probably level that at either Nico Williams for sure. Yeah, you know, at club level. None are going to be cheap, are they?
They're not.
That is the issue.
This is a bigger issue for me than the centre forwards.
Okay,
I think all the centre forwards would be fine.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at 15 goals. They would be fine. You know, the left side, I think it's such an important position for us.
But especially if your main striker isn't, because Salah scored. What did Salah get last year? 30 goals. You know, 30 odd in all comps. Haaland, we know that he's going to get that. We just don't have that guy, and I don't know if Seshko or Gyökeres will be that guy either in a first season. So you need more goals from elsewhere, don't you? And so that left wing position, It's huge. It is absolutely. Would you spend more money then on a Rodrygo than a Seshko?
I would. I think because we've all sat there for 2-3 years watching Saka run himself into the ground, and everyone knows where the ball's going, and he's accepted that responsibility, and he's got better each year. We have to look after him. He's had too many minutes for his age, and those minutes have had a lot of responsibility in them. So I'd love to see that responsibility shared. And also, we've got to look at what's happening around us. The other teams are really investing into their sides. I mean, Man City are doing what they do, Liverpool are doing what they're about to do, and we have Spurs with a new manager. And it's quite exciting for them.
Yes.
So it's very important that we do our work and we become exciting to watch again.
Yes.
Because otherwise, the narrative will be, it won't be promising for us.
Yeah, I think that's a really good shout about being more exciting to watch, because we have been a bit formulaic, haven't we? A touch at times, not as dashing or as enterprising or spontaneous as we could have been. Certainly not in the way that PSG sort of wowed the world, didn't they, in the Champions League final? We're capable of it.
Yeah, we are. We're more than capable of it. I do think there's a problem when, we know how we're going to set up, our opposition know how we're going to set up, and it can become very mundane and predictable. And that is where I think the left wing is so important, because I want someone on the other side that not only excites me, but also strikes a bit of fear into the opposition so that they can't keep overloading Saka.
Yeah, you double up. You're less likely to double up on Saka when you've got a guy on the other side who's just dangerous. It's as simple as that. In goal, obviously Arsenal need a replacement for Neto. I mean, what a loan spell that was. Just that one game where he tried to tackle someone about 30 yards out from goal. It didn't work, that is for sure. Kepa Kepa. I'll just stick with Kepa. He's available at £5 million. We've got Ben Jacobs on in a bit, so we'll grill him on that. I mean, that sounds like the deal of the century. Yep. Isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I know there's a kind of stigma at this point with buying players from Chelsea that they're trying to offload, but for us, you've got to focus on what's beneficial for you, and to bring in a very experienced Premier League goalkeeper, still only 30, for £5 million. In a couple of years, if one of our younger keepers is ready to make the step to number 2, you could probably sell him for more than you've bought him for anyway. So he is a goalkeeper that if Raya got injured, which is worst case scenario, I wouldn't panic at him having to come in.
Happy with this, Clive?
I am happy with it. So when I did sort of have a inkling about this one beforehand, and what I like about Kepa is he plays like Ray. He comes out of his area to receive the ball. And we've become so used to that now that if you have a goalkeeper stuck to his line, we'll be in trouble. Yeah. Because we've become so conditioned to having that 11th footballer. Yeah. So he does that comfortably. He clips the ball nicely. So we don't drop away. We'd have to change styles. So I think it makes a lot of sense. His family is all London-based. It works for him. I think it's going to happen.
Okay, yeah, that's exciting. I looked at the stats actually for Kepa, and from last season, because I thought my eyes told me that Kepa had a good season for Bournemouth. I think we all saw that. And I looked at the numbers, almost identical to David Raya in every regard. The save ratios, the passing accuracy, the number of successful long passes that he would clip into the forwards. They're all about the same. Yeah. So I mean that's probably really why he's been identified. Last one then, before we move on and speak to Ben Jacobs. We've discussed the obvious ones. If you were in the hot seat, Rory, this summer, is there a player that maybe no one's really talking about that much that you would be really interested in us going for?
I don't know if there's a specific player that I'm thinking, but I do think a left-footed right winger of some description, just to alleviate some of those minutes from Saka. Yeah. If Nwaneri's being sort of seen as more of an Ødegaard player, and that's where we want to move him, I think the responsibility for Nwaneri of covering both is difficult. So, I'm not sure who it would be. Sane was mentioned, of course, at one point.
Yeah, but, that didn't happen, did it? Yeah, Clive, anything else?
Anything else, apart from the ones I mentioned? Sneaky one was Anthony Gordon, funny. Yeah. That was a sneaky one. I watched him play against Ben White this year. I know Ben White's wasn't at his best fitness-wise, but he scared me.
He's bigger than you think as well, isn't he?
He was quite dominant physically down that side. Yeah. And I know that it may be, there could be some movement there. He may go to Liverpool, you never know, right? So, but Anthony Gordon was a little sneaky surprise when I had.
Yeah. Why do you think there'd be movement? Why would Newcastle let him go?
I don't know. I just feel he's a young man that's quite ambitious, wants to do things.
Okay.
If you're Newcastle trying to make money work, they really want to upgrade their right-hand side. They have Harvey Barnes on that left-hand side as well. I think they could potentially want to do something, but it's maybe me just wish casting. You know? If Newcastle fans are listening, I'll probably just ignore me. But I think he's got potential.
I'm going to put you on the spot. You said earlier that you weren't fussed really of Rodrygo, Nico Williams.
Yep.
Would Anthony Gordon still be just below them, or would you be as happy if he came in?
I think Rodrygo is the talent.
Yes.
And I think part of his game is almost undiscovered. Because we see him on the right-hand side carrying water for the left-hand side superstars. When he gets into his best position, I think the world must not even seen him yet. So we get the best of that. So I think Rodrygo is number one. But after that, I'd say Anthony Gordon by number two. So, yeah.
And now you've heard what our ideal summer window would be. So let's find out how close the Gunners are to securing some of these lucrative deals. Let's welcome to the show, live from Miami, transfer expert Ben Jacobs. Ben, you got a big smile on your face. No wonder you're in Miami.
Exactly. It is 6 a.m. at the time we're recording this, though. So apologies if I look either tired or it's doom and gloom, but gorgeous weather without making you guys too jealous.
Tremendous. Right, we've been chewing the fat. We've been knocking a lot of names around. They're all very familiar names. What can you tell us in terms of recent activity from the club? I know that Andrea Berta will have been very, very busy behind the scenes. Who do you think he's focusing his attention on right now?
Yeah, it's clearly a number 9, and I think the best way of describing it is Andrea Berta's approach is different to Edu. If he was going to a party, he would lay out 3 or 4 outfits, try them all on, finally decide what to wear. And with this race for a number 9, what's happening is both deals for Benjamin Sesko and Victor Gyökeres are being advanced or, in inverted commas, tried on before a formal bid is placed. Sesko is more advanced, and Arsenal are looking to pay below the release clause, which is variable based upon how well he did last season. It's at 80 million euros, and Arsenal are looking at 65 or 70 million. Then with Gyökeres, there's this whole tension at Sporting at the moment because Gyökeres believes that there's a fixed number he can leave for, and Sporting want a bidding war in to negotiate, but that final number is still likely to be around 70 million euros, but possibly with add-ons as well. So Andrea Berta is out in the market, effectively lining up both deals, whereas Edu tended to pick one and be very meticulous, get the player buy-in, and then discreetly try and get it over the line, often with a series of bids. And it was either a very smart tactic because Arsenal had confidence that they would get that man, or it dragged on and we got more summer sagas. We won't see that with Andrea Berta. But remember one key thing with this search for a striker, Arsenal are not intent on getting sucked in this early part of the window. A lot of Arsenal fans get impatient because they've seen Chelsea and Man City move. They're both in the Club World Cup. Liverpool move. They got a lot of business lined up very early. Berta's new. He's had to assess the plan from Edu and Jason Atu, and now he's starting to move in the market. And that's why I think that Arsenal will really get going in the early part of July.
Okay. Oh, well, that was going to be my next question. If either of these deals gets done, when do you think it gets done? Because no Arsenal fan on the planet wants to be waiting to August. You know, we want to bed this new player in, get them used to the guys on tour, preferably, and hit that season running. If you were to put a sort of time frame on concluding that deal, what would you say?
Well, I think it also comes down to the player. If they agree a fee for Sesko, I think that one could actually be done when the window opens on the 16th. I'm not saying day one of when the window reopens, but certainly in the last 2 weeks of this month. Gyökeres, I sense, will take a little bit more time because of the volume of interest and also the friction currently taking place at the moment between the player and Sporting. And my understanding with Gyökeres originally was that the player had basically said, you come to me and I'll tell you who I want to join, and then I'll go to Sporting, and then the club-to-club negotiation will be relatively routine. Now I'm being told that Sporting are saying to suitors, you got to come through the front door. You tell us if you want Gyökeres, and then we'll have a conversation on terms. And the player's starting to worry now that if he picks a preference, there might be another club that agrees a higher fee with Sporting, and he might not get his desired destination. Whereas part of this pact was not just about you can leave for 30 million euros or so below the release clause by staying for all of last season at Sporting. It was also about allowing suitors to go to the Gyökeres camp first, so he could give a clear preference. And that would likely only lead to one suitor going back to Sporting, which of course would make the club-to-club negotiations a little bit more simple. It's flipped now, and this is why the player is so frustrated by the situation.
It's Man United, isn't it? It's like they're the spanner in the works here.
Yeah, exactly. So, hi, Ben. Obviously, the attacking movements are out there. Arsenal fans are desperate for new attackers, centrally maybe in wide areas. But are you hearing anything about defensive targets or defensive movements in and out of Arsenal?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think because of the Zinchenko-Tierney situations, they were always looking on the left-hand side, and that's still the case. But I think it won't be an out-and-out left-back coming in. It will be more a player in that Calafiori mould who can play centre-back or left-back. The versatility is valued by Mikel Arteta, and it just might get the player more game time because there are still defensive options. So the number one priority 12 months ago, actually before Calafiori joined, was Joel Hatto. And that's still the case now, that Arsenal have Hatto on their radar and they could well go head-to-head with Chelsea. And Arsenal, I can tell you, would have done the Hatto deal 12 months ago, except their intel, and rightly it has to be said, was that the player wouldn't leave Ajax 12 months ago. Now he's available on the market, looking for a move, interested in the Premier League. There's actually some Saudi interest in Hatto as well, but I don't think he'll go there. So I can see a scenario where both Arsenal and Chelsea have another transfer head-to-head, and there's definitely a chance that if Arsenal do choose, and Berta's still determining, to go for this centre-back, left-back type profile, that Joel Hatto will be very high in their thinking.
Hey, Ben. I hope you're well. Left winger, Rodrygo, Nico Williams seem to be the two that Arsenal fans and Arsenal are most interested in. Does one or the other feel more likely at this stage, both more likely to leave their current club, and then if they did, one that Arsenal would go for?
Both very interesting situations. So Nico Williams has been on Arsenal's radar for ages, and Andrea Berta's got the relationship there as well. But even Edu was quite keen on Nico Williams. 58 million euros release clause, seen as market value, but you've got the wage and the agent fees. And that may be complicated by the fact that, as we revealed on talkSPORT about 2 weeks ago, Athletic Bilbao have started conversations with Williams about a new deal. So we might not even get a situation where people can bid that 58 million euros release clause, because it may change if he signs a new deal. So we shouldn't rule out a stay. I think Bayern are leading the race now for Nico Williams, and Arsenal haven't changed their perspective that that deal is just a little bit too costly, even though I know it's the kind of profile that would excite Arsenal fans. Regarding Rodrygo, definitely one to watch. There's been a lot of sort of cursory inquiries, and of the Premier League teams linked, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal are the most active on the player side. But as of now, they still don't know whether he's going to ask to leave. And if he does, it unlocks the whole situation. So I know you said earlier, Arsenal fans won't want August-type sagas, but I think if Rodrygo is to leave, it is going to take quite a bit of time, because first he has to speak to Xabi Alonso and understand what his role is going to be. And the advantage a suitor like Arsenal would have is the fact that they can just chuck him on that left-hand side, whereas at Real Madrid, he's been forced to play on the right, because obviously you've got Vinny Jr. and Kylian Mbappe. So there is a deal there to be had at around 90 million euros, I'm told, and Arsenal is still in the process of internally assessing. And I think if they go for it, it is going to be a big outlay that comes a little bit later. And then still, we should add Jamie Gittins. I know people think that move to Chelsea is a foregone conclusion. He has agreed a 7-year deal with the Blues, but they've not agreed a package with Dortmund. The expectation is that when the window reopens on the 16th, Chelsea will continue to negotiate for Jamie Gittins, and they're not far off. But don't entirely discount Arsenal. That might be a slightly left field profile to look at if Chelsea can't agree a fee with Dortmund.
He won't get a 7-year deal at Arsenal, that is for sure. That is for sure. That was one G-bomb that you dropped. Clive dropped one earlier as well in Anthony Gordon. I mean, has he plucked that from thin air, or is that actually a goer? And might that be an easier deal to do the one on
Well,
the
not an
others.
easier deal, but I think a player that Arsenal have liked, like Chelsea and Liverpool for quite some time. I think from Liverpool's perspective, if Luis Diaz leaves, then they're going to go very big on Anthony Gordon over on that left-hand side. When Newcastle were in this PSR bind 12 months ago, there was nearly a £70 million deal between Liverpool and Anthony Gordon. Gordon's head was turned. He would like to go to Liverpool despite his Everton links. And I think from Arsenal's point of view, they know very clearly from their inquiries and conversations about the dream target, Alexander Isak, that Newcastle are just shutting up shop at the moment and saying, we've got Champions League football, none of these assets are for sale, and our PSR position is fine. So I think Gordon will be difficult to pull off and maybe a bit counterproductive for Newcastle, simply because you've got Anthony Gordon plus Harvey Barnes, both in excellent form. Now, we hear some reports that might give Arsenal fans hope that Jack Grealish could be heading to Newcastle, and maybe those putting 2 and 2 together and making 4, or hoping that it's 4, will be saying that means that Gordon's going, because it is true. If Newcastle move for a player like Grealish, they'll have to lose one of those players on the left-hand side. But the bad news, I'm told, is 2 and 2 actually makes 5, and that Grealish and Newcastle is not a thing, and their aim is to keep hold of both Gordon and, of course, Harvey Barnes, who finished the season very strongly as well. So there is appreciation for Anthony Gordon, but I think it is a near impossible deal to pull off this window.
Very quick, final question, because I know we're pushed for time. Kepa, 5 million. Zubimendi, done? Are we locking it in or not?
Yeah, lock it in. Don't worry about it. These links with Real Madrid are exaggerated. It's down to Xabi Alonso having a huge appreciation for the player, but Arsenal consider that deal done, and it will be formalised. They're going to pay slightly above the release clause in order to get more preferable payment terms. So the final package could actually be a little bit north of 60 million euros and closer to 65. But keep calm, Arsenal fans. That Zubimendi deal, I'm told, is done. It's verbally agreed. Of course you want him to sign it, because of all players, he is the kind that's woken up in the past and changed his mind. But Arsenal consider that agreed in principle, a done deal, and in the process of being formalised. And Kepa, of course, expected to come in as well for 5 million. And I think that's a deal that suits all parties. Arsenal wanted Joan Garcia and actually stood a real chance of getting him because it was a strong pitch. And the only real stumbling block in the end was the fact that Barcelona triggered the clause and told him that he'll be a number 1 either right away or very soon, whereas Arsenal were looking at him as a number 2 because of David Raya. And Joan Garcia thought about Arsenal, was happy with Arsenal, but then took a secondary consideration and said, I want to be a number 1 goalkeeper right now. And that's why Arsenal and Aston Villa and Manchester United and other clubs were not able to persuade him, whereas Barcelona have offered him minutes pretty much from day one, which is interesting because, of course, ter Stegen is also still at the club.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, Ben. As always, thank you so much for getting up so early over there in Miami. We really, really do appreciate it. All right, get yourself out there. But yeah, get that cream on, Ben. Brilliant stuff. Superb from Ben Jacobs there, our transfer expert. That's all we've got time for. I mean, it is good fun, isn't it? Chewing the fat over the number, over potential targets.
It is.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see what the team can look like next season.
Yeah.
And how we play. I can't wait.
I can't wait. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time today, boys. That's all we got time for on today's Inside Gooners. Thank you for your company. Huge thanks to Clive Palmer, Rory Talks Football, and Ben Jacobs. We'll see you soon.